Penny loved the forest. Something about its wild tranquility made it the perfect place to escape from the hustle and stress of her daily life. It made the long hours she pulled at her job melt into the background, leaving her refreshed and mostly ready for another day. She frequented her local park, traveling deep into the surrounding woods, following well-marked trails, then less traveled ones, then making her own. She was comfortable there, but it grew boring. While still an escape, it was now edged with a layer of repetition that reminded her a little too much of the outside world. So you can imagine why, when she noticed a break in the trees, along the road she was driving down, after a particularly hellish day, a break, that to her well-trained eye, spoke of a hidden trail, she pulled over into the grass and gravel mixing on the side of the road, not caring that it was almost midnight. A full moon hung in the sky like a ripe fruit, and a feeling of wild adventure had overtaken her. Perhaps she would regret this in the morning, when lack of proper sleep would make her sluggish, dulling her thoughts, and slowing her day to a crawl, but that was a problem to face in the future. Leaving her car, Penny stepped into the forest, letting it embrace her like an old friend. She wove her way down the trail, stopping now and then to examine some small detail of the forest. Unfortunately, her attention to the finer things caused her to miss out on other, more interesting finds. But Penny continued on, heedless of what she had skipped over, entranced by the way moonlight shimmered over leaves. After a time, she began to feel tired. It had been a long day, and despite her wish to follow this trail to its natural end, it seemed that would have to wait for another time. She gazed around her, taking it all in for a last moment, preparing to head back the way she had come. But, before she could even take so much as a step, something caught her eye. It shone under the moonlight, erupting from a bed of leaves like it had been waiting just for her. A shed antler stood proud, a rare prize from the wild. Penny moved towards it, hand already outstretched. She grasped it, and pulled, met with unexpected resistance. Perhaps it was stuck, snagged on a branch hidden beneath the leaves. She pulled harder, and successfully unburied a corpse. Penny dropped the antler, which was firmly attached to a skull, which was attached to a sagging mess of matted fur, hugging tight to wet bone. Finding death in the forest wasn't uncommon. It was a natural part of this world cycle, but one is rarely expecting to be confronted by such a sight so late at night. Penny decided that it was really time to go, and turned back to the trail, freezing as she saw wild eyes staring out at her from behind a bush. It was another deer. This one alive, but strange. Its eyes were huge, with a static frozen look. It stepped out a little further from its hiding spot, movements jerky and stiff, revealing matted fur, and a black, oozing wound on the back of its neck. Its head swayed, neck hanging low. Thin ropes of black drool seeping from its mouth. Penny took a step back, seemingly preferring the company of the corpse to this diseased creature. The deer stepped closer, letting out a gurgled gasp. It struggled to inhale, then choked, heaving and convulsing as it vomited black onto the forest floor. Its legs buckled, and it flopped to the ground, twitching and heaving up more black. It seeped from its eyes, and stained its fur. Penny watched, paralyzed, as the deer grew still. It sighed out a final breath, eyes becoming empty. Penny stepped away from both corpses, seeming afraid to turn her back to them. This fear was quickly justified, as the newly deceased deer twitched. Something shifting under its skin. It jerked, its spine seeming to rise, and the sound of wet tearing filled the nighttime silence of the woods. Penny ran. She ran, dodging rock and root, as something pulled itself out of the deer's body, tearing flesh and sinew apart, even as it shaped it new. She ran, pushing through a patch of undergrowth with enough haste to lose the hem of her shirt to thorns, as something stood, glistening black and wet in the moonlight, standing over an empty husk. She fumbled with her keys, as something that had once been a deer, took its first steps over leaves splattered with blood. She pulled away from the forest, tires spraying gravel and chunks of grass in her wake, as she wiped at a wet splodge of black that seeped into her shirt, and stained her hands. Penny never showed up for work the next day. Penny never showed up for anything ever again. But Penny still loves the forest.